I just turned 30 and I am pivoting my entire career. I'm able to sit here now, speak into this microphone, film in front of this camera, and upload it onto the internet. But it took me 8 months to get here. There were so many hard truths that I didn't want to face, difficult conversations I did not want to have with myself. And I know that a lot of people go through career pivots. And quite frankly, I've done a lot of career pivots too, which we'll go into later. But this one felt especially difficult to face and especially difficult to navigate because I am pivoting my business as an entrepreneur. And if you're here for the tea, then I will give you all the tea, give you all the updates about what I'm doing moving forward. But it was just such a process to get to this place. And I am now in a place where I'm genuinely so excited. I know that a lot of other people also face career pivots, and maybe you're someone that wants to start a business or you have a business and it's not working anymore, so you want to pivot it. That's why I wanted to make this video. For some context, I'm Selena, the founder of Recloseted, a sustainable fashion consultancy, and I started Recloseted over 6 years ago. So I've been doing this for over half a decade, and while I still love it and I'm still so grateful for everything Recloseted has brought me, I've now accepted the fact that in many ways I've outgrown it, and the business model as it currently stands no longer serves me. Like I mentioned, it took a long time to get to this place, and I want to go through it. But yeah, basically Recloseted was my first business, and I absolutely love doing it, and it's just time for a change. So I'm going to talk through how I arrived at this decision. I'm also going to talk through career pivots I've had before and the fact that it's really not a big deal. And then I'm also going to talk through what I'm doing next and what's happening. So I just wanted to start off the fact that our careers are so important. They're such a big part of our lives. We work 40 plus hours a week. We probably work for 40 plus years. I am a firm believer that your career needs to serve you. It needs to interest you. You need to be passionate about it to some regard. You need to like what you're doing. I don't think it's realistic to like 100% of your job. I just don't think that job exists. But I do think you should like about 80% of your job, and it should push you to grow. You should be learning from it, and it should financially support you. That is my mentality going into my career and approaching my career. And I am someone that values my career a lot. I'm very growth orientated, so career is just really important for me, which is why, again, this pivot was so tricky to navigate, and I just wanted to chat through it. As I alluded to, I feel like I've outgrown my business, and there are two exercises that helped me realize this, because as an entrepreneur and a founder, I feel like a lot of the times you have to have tunnel vision on what your vision and your mission is, and you just put your blinders on and you execute. And I think I was very much so in that. I was so stubborn in a way to make it work, and I forgot the fact that you can change and you can adapt if things aren't working for you. So let me share the two exercises or the two things that really helped me arrive at the conclusion that I needed to make a change. The first thing was my partner, Richard. He really flagged to me that I hadn't been happy / I hadn't been learning from my quote-unquote job for a while. And I feel like towards the mid half of last year and the beginning of this year, things were really rough. I was trying to navigate a challenging economy. I was trying to navigate what I wanted to do with the business, and I was trying a lot of different things, throwing a lot of things against the wall. And a lot of times, like, things are out of entrepreneurs' controls, like there's the market, there's all this stuff. But I was trying a lot of things, and I was really committed to making it work. I'm really proud of that because I learned so much in the process, and now I can be confident in this decision. But also in the process, I think I really turned into a martyr. I put the business above all of my needs. And it's not to say that as a founder and entrepreneur, you shouldn't do that. Like, absolutely, you should do what it takes to make your business successful. But I think I really went on. I just think I went a little too overboard, and it took him pointing that out, which I'm grateful for, but also a friend and a mentor of mine. She pointed out to me that yes, as an entrepreneur, you do need to put a lot into your business, but at the same time, there comes a point where it's like, okay, what is this business doing for you? And you have to put yourself first. I hadn't been putting myself first for years, and it really started to show in my mental health and my physical health. So my mentor recommended I do an exercise where I made made a list of what Recloseted needed during this stage. And then on the other side, I made a list of what I needed as the entrepreneur. For so long, I had just thought about what Recloseted needed and not thought about what I needed. And that was just obviously a disservice to myself. But in the process, I also couldn't be the best founder I could be. So anyways, I did that exercise and I just realized that I wasn't learning and growing as much anymore. I was also starting to feel kind of resentful of the business. And then thirdly, I just wasn't making the amount of money I needed to make. I wasn't taking the salary I needed to be taking because I was reinvesting it back into the business. I also was just making a lot of sacrifices personally in terms of my time and what I was doing with it, because I could get another full-time job, I could do another business. And so there was just a lot of sacrifices on my part. And again, as the entrepreneur and founder, like, you should make sacrifices, but there comes a point where it's like, are you getting a return on your sacrifice? / does this still fulfill you? I realized that the current model as it stood could not keep going. That was the first realization. And it was a very black and white thing where I made a list and I realized that what Recloseted needed and what I needed were differing. So that was the first thing. And the second thing that really helped me was a book that is called Quit by Annie Duke. And I will have it linked down below. It's such a good book. But as the title suggests, it talks all about quitting. And in today's society, quitting has such a bad rep. People really encourage you not to quit, right? People say, like, you got to keep going, you got to persevere, don't quit. There's all this narrative. And as a founder and as an entrepreneur, I also think there's a lot of ego around not pivoting your business or not shutting down your business. There's just so much of your self-worth attached to the business, especially if you're a first-time founder, which I was. There was just a lot going on. This book was so helpful and there were so many takeaways, but there's 3 I wanted to share with you that really stood out to me. My first big takeaway from the book is Annie says, quitting on time often feels like you're quitting too early. And what she means by that is a lot of the times people will not quit until it is obvious to everyone around them and themselves that they should let this go. Usually there's really bad results. Maybe you have like huge losses in your business, or you're an athlete and you get a huge injury, right? Like, there's a very tangible bad outcome, but then at that point it's obvious to everyone that you should be quitting. But she makes a point that you should quit a little bit beforehand when it looks like it's too early. So like before the injury happens, before you lose all the money in the business, or before all the customers say they hate this product, you should quit well in advance of that. And that's obviously easier said than done, and she talks about that in the book. She often says that if you have a gut feeling that something isn't working anymore, you shouldn't ignore it. You should look at the factors, be very logical about it, don't be emotional about it, and pull the trigger. Have the courage to pull the trigger if you need to. So that was the first thing. And then the second takeaway really hit hard for me, because I pride myself as someone that's very perseverant. When I say I'm going to do something, I get it done, and I get it done to the best of my ability. And that's something I've always prided myself in. But Annie makes a point to say that perseverance, while it's helpful, is sometimes also unhelpful. Because if you persevere down the wrong path when you should quit, that does you a disservice. A lot of the time, she made the point, people are perseverant because they want to try to avoid the what if question, which is definitely something that applies to me. You know how sometimes you wonder what outcomes will be? Obviously, like every single day, there's things we do, right? Like if I walk, what's going to happen? If I take the bus, what's going to happen? Those are just like very minute day-to-day examples. But then more generally, if you're applying to all these different jobs and you get a lot of different job offers, you play out the what if. What if I took this job? What if I took that job? Every single day we're wondering. And then layered on top of that, I feel like there's always this narrative in society about having no regrets. You want to make sure you live life to the fullest. You don't regret anything. You don't want to look back on your life on your deathbed and regret anything. So there's all this stuff going on. Addie points out that a lot of people will keep going down a path, even though they know they shouldn't, just to avoid that what if question. Like you just go all the way down this road, even though this road is telling you like there's turn back signs, there's U-turn signs, all these signs, but you just keep going because you want to know what happens. And I think that is really, that just really, really resonated with me. And I realized that's what I was doing essentially with Recloseted. And then the third big takeaway and learning I got from this book is around implementing kill switches. Annie talks about the fact that before you go into something big, you should think through what are some things that could happen and what you could do, and what are some warning signs so that you can quit on time instead of quitting way too late. And I think a lot of times people go into things, especially people that are optimistic like me, people will go into things without thinking through like what is the worst case scenarios that could happen, because a lot of the times you don't want to think about that. You want to think positively and not think that things might not work out. But she argues that you should really think through all the warning signs, and then once they do start happening, you can implement strategies to mitigate, or you can really have logical, candid discussions and conversations with people around you and yourself around the future of what you should be doing. Really recommend the book. You can check it out. I don't think quitting is talked about enough in society, and quitting has such a bad connotation, when in fact, Annie talks about the fact that quitting is great because it allows you to drop something that's not working so that you can free up your time, your energy, your resources, and your budgets to go work on something else that may work. So yeah, it was just such a refreshing take, and I highly recommend it. So those two tools, the list of what I need, what Recloseted needs, as well as the book, really helped me face truths and have difficult conversations with myself to arrive at a point where I'm like, okay, I need to pivot. And in doing this pivot, like I mentioned, it just felt so scary because this is my business. This is my baby. It's not like I am just getting another job or I'm switching industries or whatever. It just, for some reason, it was such a big deal. And I also think there is a level of grief associated with it because I was so anchored into a certain vision and mission. And so it's just accepting the fact that that is no longer, and it can no longer be the way I thought it would be, and just accepting it, grieving it, and then moving on. I think the moving on process is also scary because deep down, always worry about what other people think of us, right? Because we are social creatures. And as much as I would love to sit here and tell you that I don't give a shit what people think, I would be lying. There's always a part of us that's like, oh, what are people going to think? What are people going to say? And I have thick skin. I've been doing this for 6+ years, but there's still a part of me that's like, ooh, I wonder how this is going to be perceived. And instead of viewing this as a failure, I think it's just such a big learning opportunity and such a big growth opportunity for me, and hopefully for you if you're watching this, to just do what you need to do. Face hard truths, have difficult conversations, do what you need to do to live your best life, as cheesy as that sounds. And so I realized I needed to make a pivot, and then the next stage was actually figuring out what that pivot should be. In all honesty, I'm still figuring it out, but I do have ideas. And part of this pivot that was really tricky to navigate is to figure out what I wanted to do next, because I do think I'm in a very privileged position that I have a lot of skills. I know I'm really smart and I'm resourceful, and I know I can figure things out, and I have experience in a lot of different industries. So there's so many different routes I could take, which I think is really cool, and I'm happy to run through my career as well, because one of the things I did was just write down everything I've done up until now to see all the different pivots I made, what I learned through all these pivots, and use that as historical data, if you will, to guide what I should do next. And so just quickly, fun walk down memory lane to just show you all the random things I've done that add up now that I look back on it. And I think that's everyone's career. In the moment, if you just continue to learn and grow and do things that you're passionate about, looking back, it'll always make sense, and you can always connect the dots and spin a narrative. So going back down at memory lane, my first career was as a pianist, and I started playing piano at a very young age, at 4 years old, which checks out because I'm an Asian girl, but also checks out because my aunt studied piano and taught piano back in Hong Kong. So I just had a built-in piano teacher. And looking back now, I was such a brat to my aunt. Like, she would tell me, like, play those arpeggio scales, and I'd be like, no, I don't want to. And I was just such a brat. And I feel really bad now. But yeah, I just started playing piano at such a young age. At the time, I hated it. Like a lot of my friends that played piano or played instruments also did, because your parents make you do it, you know? But looking back now, I'm obviously glad I had that experience, because it just taught me a lot about discipline. I would have to practice for hours every single day. I had to put in the work. I had to put in the technical skills. I had to, progress. And back in Canada, where I'm from, there's the Royal Conservatory of Music, or RCM, and there's grade levels. So it's literally like school, you keep going. And then also I did competitions too. So it taught me about competing. It taught me about doing my best, accepting failure, accepting wins. I think it was really, really good. It taught me a lot of discipline as well. And then of course it flexes different parts of your brain. Really, I think sparked my creativity and all this stuff. That was really my first career. And the reason I bring it up is because fast forward to when I turned 15, I had completed all of the RCM levels, and the last one was the teaching diploma. So I was like 15, about to turn 16, and had decided to go for the diploma because they were changing some of the requirements, and it would now become a 3-parter, and there was no way I was going to do the 3-parter. So it was like the last year, and all the people that were interested in doing it were just basically cramming to get this done before this 3-parter thing kicked in. Yeah, I was 16 trying to get this done. It was just the first time I prepared for something so hard in my life, which again reinforces that discipline, reinforces just community as well. There was a cohort of kids and young adults doing this with me. That was really fun and supportive. And then when I did finally get the diploma, it was the first time where I was like, wow, this is something that I worked hard on. This is something that I've achieved, and I felt really proud of myself. The reason why I'm saying this is because after I got that diploma, then I started teaching kids, and that was actually essentially my first business. I was a piano teacher. I ran my own mini studio. I had to do marketing, sales to get clients. I had to make sure that I had a really good product. Teaching something to someone is also a different skill set, and so I developed that early on, and now I teach a lot of my clients. But you know what I mean? There's just so many dots to be connected here. And then the funny thing is, I really loved running the piano studio, enjoyed teaching the kids, and at the time I think I started out making $20 an hour, which back then was a lot of money for a 16-year-old. And then eventually by the end of it, I continued to teach throughout university, but by the end of it I was charging like $50 an hour, which is really quite good. I loved the teaching side of it. I loved having side income. And then in terms of the actual running of the agency, I thought it was so fun. I made flyers, I stuck them all over the neighborhood. I did a referral program to try to bring up word of mouth. So it was just my first time and first taste at entrepreneurship, even though I didn't realize it was entrepreneurship. And then I fully thought I was going to go to Juilliard. I thought I was going to do the whole music thing. And when I realized that it's like the top 0.01% of people that get to perform all over the world, and even then they're not making that much money. And I just had a hard conversation with myself, and I was like, I don't know if I have it in me to do this. So I was trying to figure out what to do. I was in my junior year of high school, so I was in grade 11, and I was about to graduate the next year, basically. And a friend of mine was going to an entrepreneurship conference at our local university, University of British Columbia, or UBC. And so I went with her to this entrepreneurship conference, and I loved every second. It was so cool. There were innovative local businesses and also just founders that were pitching for investment and for money, and it was just so cool to see these live pitches. And in my brain, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool, like entrepreneurship equals business. And I decided to apply for business school, and I got in, and yeah, that was the second pivot where I moved into business. And I think I was too young at the time to realize that what sparked me at that conference wasn't just business, but it was actually entrepreneurship and the whole pitching environment. Not like the pitching in particular, but it was mainly just all the ideas and the possibilities. There was just something in the air, and it was very electric, and I basically felt a spark. And so yeah, I went into business school. I really enjoyed business school overall. Like, I made so many good friends, and some of my best friends to this day are from my time in business school. But obviously, going through that process, they groom you to work for someone else. And there's a lot of Kool-Aid talking about getting a prestigious job, climbing the corporate ladder. I fell into that, as many other people do, because when you're 19 or 20 or 21, you have no idea what you want to do. And if there's a roadmap, you're like, great, I'm going to follow that. So I decided to go into marketing because I really liked marketing. And in marketing, the most prestigious job is brand management. I wanted to go into that because, again, there's the Kool-Aid thing, and there's this whole thing in business school. If you work in accounting, you want to work at a big 4 firm. If you are doing consulting, you want to work at a big consulting firm. If you're in finance, you want to do investment banking. Like, there's all this stuff. But anyways, I digress. So I wanted to do brand management, and I landed an internship in Montreal at a beauty conglomerate. And that was such a fun summer because it was my first time living away from home. I was working on this really cool skincare brand that I still use to this day, and I was able to help them launch new products. And just seeing that as an intern at, I think I was 21. Let me do the math. Yes, I believe I was 21. I was freshly 21 working on this launch and getting to see the ad campaign, getting to work with the PR team, getting to figure out the packaging, getting to figure out the events. And as a girl, it was so cool to work in a skincare and makeup industry. And so I loved it. But it is a French company, so they were quite laissez-faire, meaning they're very go with the flow. And I think I really struggled with that because if you know me, if you've worked with me, I'm very type A, I'm very organized, very OCD. And so I did not like that environment. I loved my team. I loved the work I was doing. Anyways, I also decided that Montreal wasn't for me. I decided to move back to Vancouver and try something else. And I decided the year I graduated to do a quick internship at an ad agency because I wanted to see the other side of the table. And that was really cool too. I realized that I liked working on a lot of different client accounts. I liked working in different industries, and it was cool to see how ads came to life. But ultimately, I decided that I did want to work in more of a traditional product marketing role. So after I graduated, I started working at a telecommunications company doing product marketing, and that role was, I think, one of the best things I've ever done for my career because I was given so much responsibility. There was a really high profile rate increase that I was helping my manager on. And at some point, like, my manager had so much going on that I took a lot of it. And he was also a really good manager. He pushed me a lot as well. And I'm forever grateful for him. Basically, it was a multi-million-dollar rate increase, super high profile. I was getting so much executive attention and all eyes were on it. There was no room for error. And I think in those environments, it's sink or swim, and there's a lot of pressure, and you drink through the fire hose. And yeah, I just learned so much. I learned about financial modeling, business casing. I led a team of 25 cross-functional team members. And at 23, I was quite young, and I was also the most junior person on the team. So I learned a lot about project management, a lot about leading and motivating without authority, and yeah, just like managing press as well, because it's a rate increase and people don't like paying more money. So I just learned so much in that project. It was a lot though, and I remember learning a lot, but not loving the work I was doing, because at the end of the day, I am impacting people's livelihood, right? Like, they have to pay more money for certain things now. And so it just didn't feel great from a values perspective. So then I was like, let's make a move, let's switch. At that point, I decided to switch into the company's new consumer health division. And this was exciting because consumer health is something that I felt like I could get behind. It's helping people, it's impacting people. But beyond that, it was a completely new division that the company was setting up. So it was like being in a startup, but with the resources and with the budgets of a big corporation, which was really, really cool. And the other reason why I decided to join this team was because the leadership team was phenomenal. I really respected everyone on the leadership team. I learned so much. And so it was just a great environment. And to have that unique opportunity where you're building things from scratch, really enjoyed that process. And I learned a lot about it. And I really, really enjoyed it. Did a couple years there, decided to pivot again and join the company's philanthropy fund that helps Canadian producers and filmmakers to be able to make these film productions come to life. We did films on the opioid crisis. We talked about women infertility, like so many different topics. And it was just such a rewarding job because you're literally helping greenlight and finance and produce these amazing stories. And I learned a lot about the filmmaking industry, which is really cool, and got to meet a lot of different like founders in their own rights because they're trying to build this film, but it's very much so like a business. It all had ties to like business and marketing, but it was in different industries. And I, throughout this whole time, just really kept at the forefront. I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to develop, I want to explore different industries. And as soon as the job became easy and I felt like I could do it in my sleep, then I started to look for what I wanted to do next. That's always been my philosophy. At the same time as my corporate career, I started Recloseted, which is the consulting agency agency I founded for sustainable fashion brands. And so I did it as my side hustle for a few years before going full time. The timeline goes, I did the first job out of university in product marketing. And like I mentioned, I just didn't resonate with the fact that I was working on a rate increase. You know what I mean? Such a good opportunity for my career, don't get me wrong, but just the work itself, like I just didn't resonate with it. And so I moved into healthcare and it was great, but I also just felt like something was missing. One day at work, I wore a polyester blouse and I got a skin rash. I remember just feeling so itchy. My neck was getting red. It was just so awkward. But after the meeting was done, raced to the bathroom, tried to figure out what was going on, looked at the tag and realized that it was polyester. Googled what polyester was, realized it was made out of crude oil, and that just spurred this deep, dark rabbit hole of fast fashion. And so I watched The True Cost, became so depressed, and if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend you do. It's a lot, so just make sure you're in the right mental space to watch something like that. 6+ years ago, sustainability was not talked about or as prevalent as it is today. People around me weren't really talking about it, and I just felt like it was crazy because people are literally dying over fashion. People's waters are being spoiled. We're sending so much textile waste to the global south, into our landfills, and so there's just so much wrong with the fashion industry. I feel like we only ever see the glitzy and the glamorous side. So I did so much research. I was obsessed with this. After work, I would just do all this research, listen to podcasts, read books, talk to people. I decided to aggregate all of my research and self-publish the Recloseted Handbook, Your Sustainable Fashion Guide. My first ebook, I just published all my findings because I wanted to figure out how I could be a more mindful and intentional and conscious fashion consumer while still enjoying fashion. So I published that ebook. Once that was done, I was like, okay, what should I do next? And I realized that I have business skills and expertise and background that could be applied and put to use. Decided to reach out to local brands and pitch to work with them for free or pro bono. And I remember being so nervous, which looking back now makes no sense because who's going to turn down free work? I pitched 3 brands, all 3 said yes, and I started working with them. And I absolutely loved it. I felt so electric doing the work, and I was able to give them really good recommendations and strategies, and they were able to get results. By the end of it, they were like, Selena, this is great. We want to work with you. How can we make this happen? When that happened, I realized that I could turn this into a consulting agency, and I would really enjoy the work. That's how Recloseted started. It came out of organic need from brands around me, and me just being really passionate about it, and me knowing that I can help these conscious, most often female founders. I've been doing it for 6+ years, and I feel so honored and so privileged to have been able to work with so many amazing female founders. That to date is still the best part of my job and the thing that I'm most proud of, being able to impact people's livelihoods, their businesses, change people's lives in many instances. And so, yeah, it's been such a wild ride, and I'm still working with clients now. But like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the business model and how Recloseted looks like just needs to change. I did this analysis of all the different careers I've had, all the different lives I've led, and I just realized that at every single point, the overarching theme is the fact that I'm really growth orientated. And so as soon as I stop learning, I always want to try to do something new, and I always want to try to learn. That's really my North Star. When I first started Recloseted, because it was my first business, I was drinking out of the fire hose. It was so hectic, it was so stressful, but I loved every second of it. Now we're at a place where I'm now not learning as much, and I want to think of what's next. What's next, if you've watched the song and you want to know the tea or the updates, and again, in full transparency, I'm still figuring it out, but this is what I'm thinking, and I'm really excited about it, and I am looking forward to bringing you along the journey. Essentially, I am starting a firm, and I don't know what to call it yet, so if you have any name suggestions, let me know. This is very much so a work in progress. I want to continue to do what I've been doing, which is helping conscious female founders, but zoom out a little bit so it's not just sustainable fashion. I've realized that I'm really passionate about helping to launch and grow sustainable businesses, and when I say sustainable, it actually has 3 meanings. So it's sustainable, obviously, for the planet, but then also it's sustainable for the founder's lifestyle, aka they're not not working 24/7 and burnt to a crisp. Yes, starting a business does require work and it's hard, but it doesn't mean that you have no life all the time. I think there's a way where you can have some balance. And then thirdly, sustainable in terms of finances. So the business can actually support the founder, they can hire a team, they can give back to the community, all this stuff. I'm really passionate about building those kind of businesses and helping people achieve that. That's really what I want to grow into. I'm going to continue to put out free content, so continue to build out the media side of the business, continue advising brands and working with clients. And then on the side, I'm also going to start dabbling into investing. Investing is, I think, the next thing I want to learn about, and I've always been interested in venture capital and learning how it works. But yeah, I'm reading books about it now, taking courses, maybe thinking of doing like a part-time type of advisory role or like a full-time VC role, so we'll see. I'm exploring, but this is the next trajectory where we're pivoting Recloseted into just this firm that does media, does advising, does investing, and it's really a platform and a space to launch and scale truly sustainable businesses that are good for the planet, good for the founder's lifestyle, and also for the founder's bank account. I'm really excited. Come along for the ride. I'm going to be documenting the journey on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. I'm also going to be documenting it on Instagram. I'm at Selena J. Ho, and then also I'm going to be trying to dabble in TikTok as well. So my handle is Selena Ho _, and all the links will be down below. Last but not least, I'm going to start a newsletter as well. So in the newsletter, I plan to go way deeper in a lot of things, be a little bit more vulnerable and candid, and probably test a lot of things in a newsletter. So if you want all the most up-to-date tea and all the most up-to-date updates, sign up for the newsletter. Also trying to figure out what to call it. This is all very much so a work in progress, but I want to bring you along the journey because I think that'll be so fun. If you've watched up to here, thank you so much. I hope that this helps you. And again, I'm sitting here now able to film this video, but it took a lot of work and it took a lot of time. And so if you are also in a career pivot and you also are at a fork in the road when it comes to what you want to do, I hope this helps you realize that you're not alone and that everyone goes through it. I've lived so many different lives. I've done so many things in my career, and I've only been working for 15 years, and I probably have another 20 to 30 to go. So that's just so exciting. And like I mentioned, life is way too short to not do something that you love. You work so much, 40 plus hours a week for 40 plus years of your life. And so it's important that it fulfills you in a financial aspect, in a learning aspect, and also just in a values aspect as well. Hope this video helps you. And if you have any video requests or things you want me to talk about, leave them down below too. I'm thinking of doing one just talking about how I side hustled, Recloseted, things I've learned. Just let me know.